Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take a deeper look at the meaning of Mars in the sign of Virgo. In order to do that, I am going to be showing you an episode that I made from a series that I did a while back called Planets in Profile. In that series, I looked at Venus, Mars, and Mercury through all 12 signs. I've been rerunning some of the episodes as the planets change signs here or there, as a way of showing you guys some of those episodes. You can go check them out if you don't know they're there. It's like evergreen content that a lot of people don't know exists, and you can find on my channel. So I want to expose you for that reason, but also because we're going to continue that series later this summer by looking at the moon through all 12 signs. That is something that I thought would get started a little bit earlier than it has, but life has been busy. And so, I ended up doing a series on parenting tips for all 12 signs of the zodiac that kind of took precedence, came first. So the next series this summer that we're going to be doing will be the moon through all 12 signs, starting with Aries, going all the way through Pisces. And that'll be a continuation of this Planets in Profile series that I did a while back. It's really interesting for me to note, like every time I look back on these old series, I can't help but notice what a transformation I've gone through in the past year. Put on a lot of weight at the gym, and I changed my name from the spiritual name in the spiritual community that I was part of back to Adam Elenbaas. So it's always kind of a trip to look at these episodes. But I enjoy them. I think the content is still fantastic in terms of just like a look at the archetypal combination. What is it like when Mars is in Virgo? So I hope you will enjoy this episode. Before we get into it, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, share your comments. I'd love to hear if you have a Mars in Virgo placement. Tomorrow we'll be doing a grabbed episode. So if we have another grabbed episode at long last, I'll be excited to share that with you guys. If you want, you can find a transcript of today's talk on the website, nightlightastrology.com. When you go over there, check out my readings and courses. If you have any questions about what you find on the website, email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. So that's it. I hope that you will enjoy this flashback episode of Mars into Virgo. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Hi, everybody. This is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and this is another episode of Planets in Profile. So in this series, I'm taking a look at how planets behave when they go through the 12 signs. In this particular leg of the recording journey, we're working on Venus and Mars. So in today's episode, I'm going to be looking at Mars in the sign of Virgo, which is where it is right now as of September 2019. So I'm going to share a little PowerPoint on the screen so you can see it, and we're going to dive in. The purpose of this talk is to also give you a sense of how to interpret the meaning of Mars in Virgo if it's in your birth chart, or how to interpret the meaning of Mars in Virgo when it's just transiting through the sky. All right, so here we go. So what can we make of Mars in Virgo? Well, as always, we need to get a sense of how ancient astrologers looked at planets when they were traveling through signs. I say this in every episode. When planets are in signs, what we're ascertaining is, what is the nature of that planet? How does it typically behave? What are its strengths, weaknesses, fears? What kinds of things does it want to do? And then how does the planetary host of the sign it is traveling through host for it or provide for it? And this is the essential question of how to understand a planet when it's in any other sign but its own sign. When Mars is in its own sign, it gets to act and behave mostly like itself. There's a more masculine and a more feminine side of Mars. That's why we have two signs for Mars. Beyond that, anytime Mars is outside of its own home sign, we're also blending the meaning of the planet whose sign it's in. So for example, Virgo is the cool, dry, feminine earth sign of Mercury. It's the cool, dry, feminine, earthy temple of Mercury, you might say. So Mars is thus going to express himself in all of the things that are natural to his personality through mercurial qualities, or in relation to the position of Mercury in the birth chart. So you always want to take a look at, you need to know a bit about all the planets to do this, right? And then you need to know, okay, if Mars is in Virgo, in Mercury's sign, then I also have to look at the chart and study the relationship of Mercury in that chart to Mars. You want to see an aspect, a trine or a sextile being ideal. You also want to see that, Mercury is well positioned. As Mercury goes, so goes Mars. If I'm in your house, I'm a guest in your house, and you're sick, it's going to be hard for me to get what I need because you're sick and you can't tell me where you keep the food. So at any rate, we have to blend the two planetary significations. We want to make sure that Mercury in the birth chart, when Mars is in Virgo, is also in a good state. So it becomes incredibly important. It's a more advanced level of the interpretation, but you should be thinking about that at least. We also need to understand, part of the way that we understand the mood of any sign is by understanding some of its seasonal qualities. So for Virgo, we need to understand, for example, that this is the sign that is still in summer, still in the light half of the year, but declining rapidly toward that fall equinox where darkness takes over. So it's the last sign of light preparing for the transition into darkness. And that's a key word for Virgo's seasonal quality is preparation for the harvest. So a lot of anxiety about the future, a lot of earthy skill, technique, care, concern, thoughtfulness, intelligence. A lot of times Virgos are messengers. They have there's a feeling of service behind them. That's also related to Mercury, who is the messenger. But this last sign of summer has a lot to do with saying, okay, there's an end in sight. It's a judgment moment. My efforts are going to be measured and balanced. For example, on farms, how you do at the harvest time it's really important. Similarly, if you're preparing for a test at the end of high school, like the ACT or the SAT or something like that, well, it's a testing of your ability, and you got to be ready for it. So you're preparing for something that is coming, and there can be anxiety around that. There can be perfectionism around that, but it's also an inborn sense of needing to deliver something, needing to prepare for something, needing to pass the grade or pass the test. And then there's also the harvest maiden, which is really the image of a goddess. It's a young goddess who remains aloof, free from the world. So Virgo is a sign that has a lot to do with just the need to be whole and to be almost like Mercury in an otherworldly sense of being a messenger. And then there's also this sense of preparing for something that I have to do, the result of which will be judged, whether that's my morality, my actions, or something physical like preparing for a test or the harvest. So all of those things go into Virgo. What do we get when we put Mars with that? Well, Mars is going to struggle with mercurial issues because Mars's nature is to struggle, or find conflict or honor with mercurial issues. So you basically have the light and dark side of Mars. Either going to fight with something, struggle with something, find conflict with something, or you're going to find, will, strength, honor, and maybe even success, victory. So another thing that you can think about is when Mars is a house guest in anybody's house, Mars always wants courage, action, cutting, severing, violence, war, blood, desire, passion, action. Those are all Mars qualities. So then we always just have to ask, well, how does Mercury take care of those things, right? So for example, celebrities, here's some celebrities with Mars and Virgo. How about these couple that have something in common, like Jesus Christ and Joan of Arc? Now, these are rectified charts, right? So Joan of Arc's we have some data on. I don't think we have Jesus Christ's birth time. So we have some idea. But at any rate, even though it's a rectified chart for Jesus Christ that you find on like Astro Theme or something like that, the fact that a famous version of Jesus's chart has Mars in Virgo is, at least to me, symbolic. Because there's something that Jesus Christ and Joan of Arc have in common, which is they are both messengers, Mercury, that went to war, Joan of Arc, or that were killed or were martyrs. So Mars traditionally has the meaning of martyrdom. That one of the high ends of Mars is dying, fighting in battle and dying for something, like a warrior or a martyr for a cause. So you have messenger, Mercury, teacher to a certain extent, messenger. Joan of Arc heard a voice. And if you think of the movie that was based on her, I think it's called The Messenger. Anyway, Jesus Christ, Joan of Arc, messenger, warrior, martyrs. That's a famous thing. It actually is not entirely dissimilar from two famous women, Diana, Princess of Wales, and Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, right? One of the things that they both have in common is death in relation to automobiles, something else that Mercury rules, right? Diana, Prince of Wales, killed in an automobile accident. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, obviously, her husband is killed while driving in a procession. Why do I say it seems kind of random? These were both women who were also sort of empowered messengers of their time, who became also symbols of tragedy, right? The death, the violence, and specifically with cars involved in both, which is Mars in Virgo kind of phenomenon, or Mars in Gemini, where the potential for accidents around, moving vehicles or mercurial things exists. Mars being the god of accidents, of course. How about Charles Manson? There you have another sort of empowered messenger motif, but this time it's really dark. The dark side of all of this is the craziness, the insanity, that Mercury as the mind and Mars as Mars Mercury sometimes as insanity, violence and rhetoric, stuff like that. Friedrich Nietzsche. There's another an empowered, cutting, critic, analyst, philosopher of human culture, of philosophy, history of philosophy, religion. But he has that message of being a kind of empowered, provoking writer or messenger. Jeff Buckley, a singer-songwriter who dies. I think he drowned, but it's not so much about his death in this case as it is just the kind of embattled writer, singer-songwriter, which is what he was. He was an angsty kind of poet. And you find that motif a lot as well. Like Trent Reznor is very similar in this just kind of like angsty, aggressive kind of, but very poetic and a little dark. Same thing with Nietzsche, right? You have this kind of dark, poetic, dark messenger motif. That's a Mars thing. Ernest Hemingway, also a writer who violently took his own life, but also Ernest Hemingway, of course, is the master of precision language, right? Simple sentences, and kind of a minimalist, right? That's a Mars Mercury thing, especially when you take in the earthy consideration. You have Mars Mercury as Mars Mercury also as economy, craft, things that are simple, and the kind of cutting and slicing and dicing of extraneous things with an analytical edge. Of course, Ernest Hemingway, also a kind of tragic writing figure. How about Dr. Dre and Suge Knight, right? Talk about the war of words, the war in the, you've got like different kind of prophetic rappers and singer-songwriters who are mostly lyrical, right? Messengers, but also warriors with one another. And it's very youth culture. It's still driven around, the experience of youth in many ways. A lot of the rappers, of course, come up out of this kind of adolescent, young adult mood, come up around it. So the war on words, Dr. Dre, Suge Knight, and executive power in the world of rappers. Joan Rivers is a critic, cutting intellect, right? Cutting Mars, intellect, Mercury. Susan Sontag, famous literary critic. I had to read a lot of her in grad school. And similar, kind of dark, heavy, intense, analytical, dry, but really brilliant kind of wordsmith, but had a dark side to her as well. I think it's either Avicii or it's Avicii. I can't remember how you pronounce it. Someone out there can remind me. Another, kind of tragic DJ, right? Like he has this brilliant, like I believe he just passed actually, but he had this brilliant technical craftsmanship, right? Like when you think about cutting, slicing, dicing, but having a message, right? Mercury is often the voice of the singer-songwriter, Mercury, for example, is the inventor of the first musical instrument in Greek myth, the lyre. So you have similar like technicians of music like Suge Knight and Dr. Dre as well, right? And then Martin Heidegger, similar, just cutting, deep, incisive, intellectual figure, real messenger, a little dark as well. Mars brings that edge of fear and power, and a little bit of darkness with it. Mars is one of the traditional rulers of death, in fact. And Martin Heidegger, of course, is famous wordsmith, another famous wordsmith. So that gives you a feeling for what Mars in Virgo is all about. That's where Mars is in the sky right now, and so you can feel this energy around. You want to be careful also of it's easy when Mars is in Virgo transiting, it's easy to get into verbal kind of fights with people, so that can happen as well. All right, so that's a little bit about Mars in the sign of Virgo. Hope this was helpful. Hopefully help you to interpret Mars in your birth chart and in those people that you know, or when it's just traveling in the sky, have an idea about what's going on. Okay, take care.